The king came north beneath a sky the color of old steel, and Winterfell, which had always seemed to Eddard Stark the surest thing in the world, felt that morning like a keep raised on hollow ground. He stood in the yard before the gatehouse with his cloak stirring at his calves and his gloved hands clasped behind his back, listening to the thunder of hooves rolling nearer up the King's Road. All the castle had been awake since first light. Servants ran with casks and trenchers, hounds barked in the kennels, stable boys shouted, and smoke from the kitchens drifted thick and greasy through the damp northern air. Yet beneath all the noise, there was a tautness that did not belong to feasting. It lived in Ned's bones, in the slight ache behind his eyes that had not left him since the Raven had come with word of Jon Arryn's death and Robert's coming. Catelyn stood above him on the steps with Sansa and Arya between them, Bran hopping from one foot to the other in excitement, Rickon gripping the wool of Septa Mordaine's gown with one chubby fist. Robb was at his mother's right hand, straight-backed and already half a lord in his baron. Jon stood farther back, where no one had told him to stand and no one had needed to. Bastards learned that art early. Ghost moved pale and silent at his heel, white fur ghosting dimly against the dark stones, red eyes fixed upon the gate. Ned looked at the boy only once, but it was enough. Long face, gray eyes, dark hair, a Stark face. So entirely a Stark face that men who did not know better had looked at him since infancy and seen no mystery in him at all, only shame. Ned had spent 14 years praying the world would remain that blind. 14 years praying Robert Baratheon would never one day ride through his gate. Then the horns sounded from the walls, and the royal procession spilled through the gatehouse beneath fluttering banners. Gold cloaks, knights in bright enamel, pack horses, wheelhouses, servants, squires, hounds, and at the center of it all, a great man on a great horse, black-bearded, thick through chest and belly, his laughter already preceding him as if it were something carried in the wind. Robert had once looked like the warrior songs promised. Ned could still recall him at 18, long-limbed and mighty, with his warhammer across his shoulders and his black hair blowing wild about his face. The man who dismounted in the yard wore the same face thickened by wine and years, but the old force remained in him. He hit the ground like a thing made to take land by storm. Ned! The name cracked across the yard. Robert strode through mud and straw and men alike and caught Ned in both arms. He smelled of horse, damp wool, sweat, and the sour sweetness of old wine. For one heartbeat, Ned was back in another life, before kings and graves and blood promises, when they had been boys fostered in the eerie and the world, still had room in it for simple loyalties. Then Robert crushed him hard enough to bruise the ribs, and drew back with wet brightness in his eyes. "You old hard-faced Northman," he said. "Gods, it's good to see you. And you, your grace." "Your grace?" Robert barked. "I crossed half the realm for that. I'll have brother from you, or I'll have nothing." There was warmth in the words and command beneath it. There always had been. Ned inclined his head. "Then brother. That's better." Robert turned, calling for names before introductions were properly made, though he knew most of them already by letter and memory. He kissed Catelyn's hand with rough courtesy, pinched Bran beneath the chin, laughed when Arya refused to curtsy prettily enough, and promised Rickon a puppy or a pony, or perhaps both. Sansa glowed beneath his notice. Robb took the king's measure with frank young admiration. Robert slapped the boy's shoulder and said he would be taller than Ned before the year was out. His eyes passed over Jon, then halted. Not because Jon demanded attention. If anything, the boy had gone stiller than before, trying to become less than the space he occupied. But Ghost had bared his teeth in silent distrust, and the white direwolf drew the gaze like a patch of snow in a dark wood. Robert squinted. "And who's this?" Ned felt the yard tighten around him. "My son," he said. It was a lie he had spoken often enough that the words no longer stuck in his throat. Today they came out sounding to him like stones. Robert's gaze flicked from Jon to Ned, then back again. Some flicker of surprise, or perhaps curiosity, crossed his face, but it lasted no longer than a spark on wet tinder. "Hey," he said at last. "The North breeds them solemn. Jon bowed his head, formal and silent. Cersei's mouth had gone hard with a thin, amused contempt. Jaime Lannister looked from the boy to Ned with the cool attention of a man cataloging pieces on a board. Tyrion, climbing down from a wheelhouse and brushing travel dust from his sleeve, watched Jon with a far kinder and more interested eye. If Robert noticed the Queen's expression or his brother-in-law's interest, he gave no sign. He threw an arm about Ned's shoulders and began booming about food, fires, beds, ale, and the hardships of the road. Yet even as he laughed, Ned saw what time and rule had worked in him. The lines at the corners of the eyes, the fatigue hiding under bluster, the grief when Jon Arryn's name slipped into a sentence and was abruptly swallowed. The feast was set for later. Robert demanded first to wash, then to see the castle, then to see Lyanna. He said her name too quickly, like a man reaching for a cup. They went together into the crypts before the hearths had been fully lit in the great hall. Down the worn stone steps they descended, past the cold breath of the earth, and the old stone kings with their iron swords laid across their laps. Torches hissed. Water whispered somewhere in the walls. The smell was ancient rock, old dust, and the faint mineral bite of damp. Here, under Winterfell, sound always seemed to come from farther away than it should. Robert's steps slowed of their own accord as they passed the dead of House Stark. "Your people know how to brood," he muttered. "You'd frighten the gods from their own thrones with all this stone. They have sat here longer than any king in the south. And glared at more men than they ever blessed. They came at last to Lyanna. Her likeness sat in stone with long face and quiet eyes, the sculptor having caught not the wildness that had made men remember her, but the stillness death had given. There were fresh winter roses at the foot of the tomb, blue petals beginning to curl at the edges. Ned had not put them there. Some servant girl must have believed it fitting, or perhaps the gods themselves had a hand in mockery. Robert stood before the statue, and for a little while he said nothing. The torchlight moved across his broad face, softening and hardening it by turns. When he spoke at last, his voice had lost the yard's easy thunder. "I should have carried her south," he said. "I should have laid her in a place where she'd have sunlight and singers and silk, not in the dark beneath the ground. She was a Stark. She belonged here. Me. She belonged with me." The old answer rose at Ned's teeth and died there. Robert had loved an idea of Lyanna so ferociously that he had never forgiven the world for failing to make the idea flesh. In another man, that kind of love might have curdled into shame. In Robert, it had become history. He touched the stone cheek with his thick fingers, then turned. "Jon Arryn is dead," he said bluntly. "The realm grows rotten beneath me, and every man in a court smiles while he steals. I need someone I can trust. I came north for that as much as for her. You'll take the hand, Ned. I'll have no refusal." "No, Dad." Ned looked at his sister's carved face and felt the promise he had kept for 14 years beating at him like a trapped bird. If he went south, Robert would be king beside him every day. If he went south, the old wounds would be nearer than ever. If he went south, Jon would remain behind in Winterfell with a secret that could destroy him if it ever escaped the grave. And secrets had a way of rising when old men died and kingdoms sickened. He had thought often, in the years since the Tower of Joy, that if the truth ever had to be spoken, it must be spoken by him, and first to Robert, and in the only place where a sliver of mercy might stand between king and child. He drew a long breath that felt colder than the crypt. "There is something you must hear before I give you any answer." Robert frowned. "What talk is this?" Ned did not look away from Lyanna's stone eyes. "Jon Snow is not my son." At first, Robert only stared, not yet understanding. "What?" Ned heard the sound of torch fire, water in the walls, the distant thud of life overhead in the castle that seemed suddenly very far away. "He is Lyanna's son," he said. And then, because half-truth was no truth now, by Rhaegar Targaryen. Robert did not move. For one impossible instant, he seemed not a king or warrior or even a man, but some figure cut into the crypt wall itself, arrested between heartbeats. Then color flooded his face so swiftly it was as if blood had been poured into him. "You lie." The words came low, not shouted. That frightened Ned more than any roar could have done. "I do not." Robert took one step, then another, until they stood so close Ned could smell the stale wine on his breath and the iron under it, the old scent of battle that had never wholly left him. "You dare bring that filth here before her? You dare speak his name to me over Lyanna's grave?" "I dare speak the truth." "The truth?" Robert seized Ned by the front of his jerkin and slammed him back against the cold stone beside the tomb. Torches leapt. "The truth is Rhaegar Targaryen stole her, raped her, killed her. The truth is I smashed his breastplate at the Trident while he died calling for some song. Do not stand there with your solemn face and tell me he left a get behind under your roof." Ned gripped Robert's wrists but did not wrench free. Robert was still monstrously strong. "The Kingsguard were at the tower," he said, forcing the words through the pressure at his throat. "Arthur Dayne, Oswell went. Gerald Hightower, not with Aerys, not with your children of prophecy and King's Landing, not with Rhaegar on the Trident, with Lyanna." Robert's hands twitched. "Why?" Ned demanded softly. "Why would the finest swords in the realm stand watch and Dorne over a stolen girl, unless what she carried mattered more to them than king or prince? Do not make me hear this. You asked for truth." Robert let him go with a violence that sent him staggering sideways. "I asked for no such treason." The word cracked through the crypt like a blow. Somewhere further down the darkness, a drop of water struck stone. Ned steadied himself and laid one hand on Lyanna's tomb, because he needed the touch of something colder than his own fear. "When I found her, she was dying," he said. "She bled herself out, bringing him forth. She made me promise. I took the child, and I brought him home, and I named him mine, because if I had done otherwise, you would have killed him." Robert's face changed. It was a small thing, no more than a flicker in the eyes, but Ned saw it. "You think that of me? I know that of you." "No." Robert pointed a thick, trembling finger at him. "No. You hid him because you did not trust me. You hid him because you put your sister's bastard above your king, above a child's death. He is no child. He is dragon seed. He is 14. Robert's mouth twisted. "Hey, and 14 grows to manhood. 14 grows to banners and broken kingdoms. Have you gone mad in this frozen place? Viserys is across the sea, Daenerys with him, and that is danger enough. Now you tell me there is another beneath my own friend's roof, raised by the Lord of Winterfell like some wolf in a dragon's skin? He knows nothing," Ned said. "Nothing of father or mother. He is a boy who wanted the wall before ever you came." That checked Robert for half a breath, but only half. "So the bastard wears black and all is forgiven? There is nothing to forgive in him." Robert spun away. He struck the stone pillar beside Lyanna's tomb with the side of his fist. The sound boomed through the crypt. When he turned back, there was blood across his knuckles, dark in the torchlight. For a heartbeat, Ned saw not a king, not even the man from the yard, but the young Lord of Storms end with grief split open inside him and nowhere to pour it but rage. "Did she love him?" Robert asked. The question was so naked it cut deeper than the anger had. Ned looked at his sister's face in stone. He remembered fever-bright eyes, rose petals wilted brown against blood-soaked sheets, a hand clutching his heart enough to bruise, and a whisper. "Promise me, Ned." He remembered the 3 white cloaks at the tower door and the strange certainty, even then, that the storymen had sung of stolen maiden and noble rescuer had not held all the truth. But what he knew was not enough to answer such a question cleanly, and Robert had loved her too long to endure any answer that was not simple hatred. "I do not know all her heart," Ned said. "I know only that she begged me to keep her son alive." Robert laughed then, once, a terrible broken sound. "Her son, God's help me." He put both hands over his face and stood breathing hard. When he lowered them, his eyes were wet, whether from fury or grief, Ned could not tell. "All those years," he said. "All those years I spoke of her to you, and you stood there with his get under your roof, with her blood in him as well." Robert rounded on him. "Do not ask pity of me. I ask justice. There is no justice in dragons. There was no justice in the murder of Elias' children either." The words came before Ned could call them back. They struck like thrown stone. Robert went very still. A red pulse leapt in the torch between them. Ned held his ground, though every instinct told him he had brought himself to a cliff edge. Robert had never liked to hear of kings landing in the sack, of babes broken against walls and women butchered to make a kingdom clean. He had accepted it. That was all. Accepted it, and buried the memory under ale and laughter, and the long convenience of victory. "At least they were not raised to manhood in my friend's hall," Robert said at last, voice thick. "No," said Ned. "They were not given the chance." Silence. Long enough for the crypt to swallow them both. When Robert spoke again, it was with the harsh control of a man clamping iron around his own throat. "No one hears this, not the queen, not your lady wife, not a groom or serving girl. No one. If the realm learns there is a son of Rhaegar Targaryen in the north, every fool lord with an old grievance will begin sniffing for a crown where there is none." "There is none," Ned said. "He is a bastard. That matters until it does not." Robert took a breath. "I will see the boy in the morning." Ned's back stiffened. "You will do nothing rash." Robert's gaze slammed into him. "Do you command me in your own tombs, Stark? If any man comes at him with steel in Winterfell, he comes through me first." For one instant, Ned thought they might kill one another there between the dead kings. Robert's hand dropped to the hilt at his side. Ned's own fingers brushed the pommel of ice, though he had not drawn it in a king's presence in years. Lyanna's stone face watched them without judgment. It was Robert who looked away first. "Damn you," he said roughly. "Damn you and damn him. And damn the whole blood-stained line." He swiped a forearm across his eyes as if ashamed of what had gathered there. "Morning, Ned. I'll look on him in the light, and then I'll say what is to be done. Until then, he breathes, because I will not have this castle running red on the first night I've returned to your hall." He turned and strode away, torches throwing his shadow huge against the crypt walls. Ned listened until the sound of his boots had been swallowed by stone. Only then did he let the breath leave him. He put both hands on Lyanna's tomb and bowed his head until cold stone pressed his brow. "I kept him," he whispered. "I kept him as long as I could." The crypt gave him back nothing. When Ned came above again, the hall had brightened with fire and banners and servants hurrying to make cheer. Robert had already begun to drink. He laughed too loudly, called for music too soon, and tore at his meat as if appetite might silence memory. Cersei watched him with narrowed green eyes. Jaime looked bored. Tyrion looked curious. Jon sat below the salt, beside Benjen and Theon, one hand resting on Ghost's neck, unaware that the king at the high table had not looked so much at his own children all evening as at him. Once, near the middle of the feast, Robert raised his cup and found Jon's face across the hall. The king drank without breaking his gaze. Jon's hand tightened in Ghost's fur. Jon woke to a silence he could feel. Winterfell was never truly quiet. Even at its stillest, there were footsteps on stone, the bark of dogs, the far-off clang of metal from the yard, the hiss of steam rising from the hot springs into morning cold. But men who lived long in one place learned the shape of its usual sounds, and when some note was missing or changed, it tugged at the skin like a draft through a shuttered room. He dressed quickly, pulling on wool and leather with cold, stiff fingers, and found Ghost already waiting by the door, red eyes fixed upon him with unnerving stillness. When he descended to the yard, he saw at once what had changed. Lord Eddard Stark stood on the gallery above the training ground with the king beside him, and though both men faced outward, neither looked at ease. Robb was already below with wooden sword in hand. "You slept like the dead," he called when Jon came down. "Come on, before Joffrey gets here and makes a song of his own courage." Jon snorted and took up a practice blade. The air carried a chill dampness that promised rain by noon. Stable muck and trampled straw scented the yard. Men-at-arms moved aside to give the Stark boys room. Theon leaned against a post with his easy smirk. Arya had shinnied up onto the lower rail despite Septa Mordane's shrill protest from a distant doorway. Bran was somewhere above, half out a window, and nearly falling with delight each time wood struck wood. Jon set himself opposite Robb, and for a little while the world shrank to familiar motion. Step, turn, cut, recover. Robb was broader in the shoulders and stronger in the bind. Jon quicker at the wrist, quicker in the feet. They had learned one another too long to be surprised by much, but there was joy in the contest all the same, and the yard's chill bled out of Jon as sweat rose under his collar. He felt the king's eyes on him before he looked up. Robert Baratheon stood with one forearm on the gallery rail. His expression was unreadable from below, but the stillness in him was wrong. Robert was not a still man. All his life he had been motion and appetite and noise. Even in repose, he had the look of a storm waiting for ground to break upon. Yet now he watched Jon with an attention that made the hairs lift at the nape of Jon's neck. "Again," Robb said, grinning. Jon came at him harder, perhaps because he wanted the watching to stop. Perhaps because some stubborn, mean part of him would not give the king the satisfaction of seeing him falter. Robb drove him back. Jon slipped, turned, struck Robb smartly on the shoulder and won a bark of laughter from Theon and Arya both. Arya clapped from the rail. "That was better than yesterday." "You would cheer any blow against Robb," her brother said. "I would cheer any blow against anyone stupid enough to miss." Ghost had circled beneath the gallery and now sat on his haunches with his head lifted. Robert looked down at the direwolf and then back to Jon. Something in his face altered, not softened. Robert was too full of old iron for softness, but changed, as if whatever dragon he had expected to see had been replaced by something more dangerous to him. A boy with dark hair and gray eyes, all northern angles and reserve, who laughed like no Targaryen song could teach. Benjen Stark came into the yard soon after, black-clad, with the road already in his boots. Jon saw him and his mood lifted despite himself. "Uncle," he called, lowering the practice blade. "When do you leave for the wall?" Benjen smiled in that brief, dry way of his. "Soon enough. Take me with you." There was laughter at that from some of the men, but Jon meant it, and Benjen knew he meant it. The first ranger shook his head. "The wall is no pageant, boy. I never thought it one. Nor is it a place for childish songs of glory." Jon threw a glance toward the gallery, toward the king, though he had not meant to. Better a hard place honestly earned than a warm one where every man knows where you belong before you speak. Robb frowned, not understanding the bitterness in it. Benjen's own gaze sharpened. On the gallery above, Robert straightened. Ned saw it too. He descended almost at once and called Jon back to the bout, but the ease had gone out of the yard. Jon fought Robb again, this time badly, and took a crack on the thigh for his distraction. Arya shouted that he was becoming stupid. Ghost paced and whined. The king left before Joffrey ever appeared. It was near the edge of the Godswood that Robert chose to speak. The red leaves of the heart tree rustled softly overhead, though there was little wind. Pools fed by the hot springs gave off pale ribbons of steam among the dark trunks, and the white face in the weirwood seemed to peer through drifting breath like some old watching god. Ned would have preferred walls. Robert, perhaps because of the truth spoken among tombs, preferred open air. "So," the king said, looking out across the black water of the pool, "the boy wants the wall. He has spoken of it since he was old enough to hear Benjen's tales." Robert made a sour sound. "Benjen's tales make frozen glory of a sentence. He will tell him the truth of it." Robert flexed his blood-scabbed knuckles. I looked at him. Ned said nothing. I looked for Rhaegar. The name came grudgingly, as if dragged over broken glass. I looked for silver hair, purple eyes, some cursed princeling beauty. There's none of it. No. There's Stark enough in him to shame a kennel of direwolves. Robert laughed once, without mirth. And that... that may be worse. Ned turned toward him. Worse? Robert's face had gone unexpectedly naked. When he smiled at the girl on the rail, I saw her. Arya, Ned thought. It was Arya who had Lyanna's face. But Robert did not say Arya. He meant memory itself, and memory never looked only at what stood before it. Ned felt the old ache open in him. He is innocent of his birth. He is guilty of being born. That is not guilt. It is in kingship. Robert faced him fully now. Listen well. I will not have the boy murdered in your yard like some kennel pup. I will not do that to you, nor to her memory, though gods know the memory has wounded me enough. But I will not have him free in the realm either. No Lord's Hall, no court, no marriage, no sons. If he wants the wall, then let the wall take him now. Ned had known it would come to this, and still the words struck hard. He is 14, and if he lives to 40 in black wool atop a frozen heap, he may count himself more fortunate than most of Rhaegar's blood. Robert stepped closer. Do not mistake me, Ned. This is mercy because it comes through you. Through you alone. Another man hides a Targaryen from me for 14 years, and I take his head. Ned's mouth went dry. I hid my sister's child. You hid my enemy. I hid a child. Robert's eyes narrowed, but not in the hot way of the crypt. He had burned through that for now. This was colder, kinglier, and therefore more dangerous. Then keep him alive by sending him where no crown may reach him. Jon Stark takes him north before I leave Winterfell. The boy speaks no truth of his parentage to any living soul. The lie stays buried. Jon Snow he remains until he dies. And if he refuses... Robert looked at him long enough that Ned heard a crow calling somewhere above the trees. Then I will decide another answer. There it was, the iron beneath the mercy. Ned inclined his head once because there was nothing else to do. He will go. Robert's shoulders eased by a finger's width. Good. Ned. He looked away toward the heart tree. You'll come south with me. Ned stared. After this you ask it still? After this, I ask it more. Robert's voice hardened. You hid a danger beneath your roof and call it love. Very well. Pay for love and service. I need one honest man in King's Landing, and if I cannot trust you cleanly, I can at least trust that you love your own enough to keep faith with the bargain. Serve me his hand. Serve me well. Let the boy vanish into black vows and cold stone, and perhaps the gods will pretend they've not laughed themselves sick over us both. Money. The leaves whispered overhead. The face in the tree seemed to bleed. Ned thought of Jon's face when told. He thought of Catelyn, of what she would hear from him before the day was done. He thought of southern courts full of knives, and of a boy riding north under sentence disguised as choice. I will serve, he said at last, and felt the words settle like chains. Robert grunted, half relief and half exhaustion. Good. Then we are not wholly lost. He turned to go, then stopped and added without looking back. If he breaks those vows, Ned, if he ever sets one step toward claim or crown, I will kill him myself. Ned watched the king walk away among the dark trunks, and knew that a life had been saved and broken in the same breath. Catelyn knew before he spoke that something in the world had tilted. Ned came to her chamber after dusk with the look he wore when bringing tidings from beyond the edges of ordinary life. A death in the Bannerman's hills, raiders on the shore, a sickness in some winter town. Yet this was more private and more terrible than any of those. He closed the door with his own hand and stood there a moment, as if unsure whether there remained enough silence in the room to hold what he carried. Catelyn dismissed the maid without being told. The fire had burned low. Rain whispered at the shutters. Her embroidery lay across her lap, half a trout in silver thread, and she became suddenly aware that her fingers had tangled the skein. What has happened? She asked. The king knows about Jon. For the briefest instant, she thought only that some old camp rumor had reached Robert's ear at last. and that the king, who fathered bastards as other men spilled seed, had made some cruel northern jest of it. But Ned's face did not hold the shame she had expected for 14 years. It held fatigue and an ancient grief returning. "What does he know?" she said carefully. Ned crossed the room and stood before the hearth. "He knows Jon is not mine." The embroidery slid from her lap to the floor. She stared at him, hearing the rain, the fire, the slow pulse in her ears. "Not yours," she repeated. "No." There had been a time, early in their marriage, when she had prayed with all the stubborn intensity of youth to be told that much. Not because it would have absolved Jon. Nothing in those bitter years had seemed capable of absolving him, but because it would have changed the wound. A husband's dishonor was one pain. A stranger's child set in her hall and raised beside her own while she could not strike him or cast him out was another. In the years since, the pain had become habit, and habit had become part of the shape of Winterfell itself. Now Ned had said no, and the floor seemed to shift beneath her feet. "Then whose?" she whispered. He closed his eyes once, briefly. "Lyanna's." Catelyn had not thought herself capable of greater astonishment. She was wrong. "Lyanna?" The name came out all breath. "Your sister." Ned nodded. 100 memories struck her at once, not in order but in a storm. The first time she had seen Jon in the nursery at Winterfell with his infant fist wrapped around a strip of fur. The way Ned had gone cold as ice whenever she asked the mother's name. The whispering names others had brought her, Ashara Dane, Willa, camp followers and Dornish girls, and the stillness with which Ned had denied all but never. She remembered resenting that stillness more than any shouted defense. She remembered the hard set of Jon's young mouth when her children passed him something meant for him, only after looking to her first. She remembered herself letting the moments happen because some stubborn, wounded part of her had thought them just. "Lyanna had a child," she said, as if shaping the thing aloud might make it comprehensible. "And you brought him here and named him yours." "With Rhaegar Targaryen," Ned said, and the room changed again. Catelyn sank slowly into the nearest chair, though she had not intended to sit. "God." He was born in Dorne, at the tower where Lyanna died. I found her there. The King's Guard guarded the place. Only Howland Reed and I came away. "No." Catelyn pressed both hands together so hard the knuckles whitened. Fear came now, fast on the heels of wonder and outrage, and a thing very like shame. "Does Jon know?" "Not yet." "Who else?" "Robert and Howland. No one more." She laughed softly, disbelievingly, at the neatness of the cruelty. 14 years. 14 years she had shared a bed and children and seasons with this man, had managed his hall and borne his name and worried every wound he brought home to her. And all the while the greatest truth in his life had been sealed behind his teeth. Yet even as the hurt rose, so did the knowledge of why. If he had trusted her, then she too would have lived 14 years with a king's executioner standing behind every quiet morning. She could not tell whether the exclusion stung more or the protection. "I thought you faithless," she said at last. Ned looked as if the words pained him more than accusation would have. "I know. And you let me think it." "Yes. And I took that out on the boy." His silence then was answer enough. Catelyn shut her eyes. She saw Jon at 5, solemn and watchful. Jon at 10, keeping back from Rob's new mail shirt until Rob himself pushed it into his hands. Jon at 13 with Ghost beside him, too old to ask for kindness, and still young enough to notice each lack of it. She had told herself that a woman must protect her own. She had told herself that bastards were dangers simply by existing near true-born heirs. All of it remained true, in its way. Yet the shape of the danger had changed so utterly that her old certainties now looked small and mean beside it. "He is not legitimate?" she asked suddenly, because that mattered. In Westeros it always mattered. Not in any way the realm would honor. Whatever passed between Lyanna and Rhaegar, no lord in the Seven Kingdoms would put a crown on such a truth. and not call the land to war for the sake of it. No, and key. Robert would kill him before that. Yes. The answer was plain as weather. What has the king said? Ned told her then. The crypts, the fury, the dawn in the yard, the bargain in the godswood. Jon to the wall at once. Ned south as hand. Silence from every living mouth. By the time he finished, Catelyn's embroidery had lain forgotten so long the firelight had turned its silver thread to dull tin. She sat with her fingers folded in her lap, composed because she had learned composure as other women learned music, and beneath it her thoughts moved fast as fish under ice. The wall, she said. It is hard. It is life. It is banishment. It is life, he repeated. And in that stubbornness she heard all the helplessness he would never name. She rose and crossed to the hearth, not because she needed warmth, but because movement gave the body something to do while the mind rebuilt itself. The truth rearranged everything. Jon had not been Ned's betrayal. He had been Ned's burden, Ned's vow, Ned's wound. And because Catelyn Tully Stark had not known, she had turned her face from a child who had needed only what all children need, a place without suspicion in it. The realization did not make her soft. It made her sick. You should have told me, she said, still facing the fire. I could tell no one. I am not no one. No, Ned said quietly. You are the one I most wished I could tell. That, more than any oath, made her blink hard against sudden tears. She turned back to him. Then hear me now. The boy must go north before the king's mercy cools. Robert Baratheon is never more dangerous than when he thinks himself forgiving. Vengeance should take him, and soon. Before the queen sense weakness in him. Before some fool servant repeats a word half-heard. Dad. Ned gave the faintest nod. And Jon must know something, she said. Not everything, perhaps, but enough that he understands why his life changes in a day. Otherwise, he will hate you. Perhaps he should. Catelyn looked at her husband a long time. He will not, she said, and was surprised to find she believed it. Later, after Ned had gone to find the boy, she crossed the keep and stood for a little while in the outer passage where Jon's chamber lay. The door was half open. He sat on the edge of his bed with Ghost's head across his knee, packing with quick, angry hands, though no one had told him yet to pack. Perhaps boys sensed exile as beasts sensed storms. Perhaps he was only being Jon and readying himself for the wall he had long imagined. There was lamplight on his bowed head, on the dark hair that should have told her nothing and had told her everything wrongly for years. Catelyn could not make herself enter. She stood there too long, then drew off the fur-lined riding gloves she had taken from a chest for Robb and left them on the stool by his door. It was not absolution. There was no such simple thing, but it was the first kindness she had ever offered him with no bitterness in her hand. The next morning, the king insisted on a hunt. Men always wished to spend fury on something. Better, Ned thought, on boar and stag than on boys. The wolves would receive them in damp silence. Rain from the night before still clung to the pine needles and fell in cold ticks upon helm and shoulder as they passed beneath the boughs. Hounds strained at their leads. Jory Castle rode with the small party, as did Sir Roderick and half a dozen others, but Robert soon outpaced them all in his impatience, and it was Ned alone who found himself beside the king when the first boar broke from cover. Robert went at it like a younger man and a foolish one, shouting. Spear lowered, his horse snorting through foam. The boar wheeled with a squeal like tearing metal. For an instant, beast and king seemed set to meet in one ugly collision of tusk and flesh. Then Robert drove the spear home just behind the shoulder, and the boar toppled in a heave of mud and blood. He dismounted, breathing hard, face flushed and eyes bright in a way Ned did not like. That, Robert said, panting, is how a thing should die, looking you in the eye. The boar twitched twice and lay still. Blood darkened the wet leaves beneath it. Ned reined in nearby. You nearly let it gut your horse. It nearly did not. You are not 18. Robert threw back his head and laughed. but there was no true mirth in it. Nor are you. He yanked the spear free and red drops spattered his boot. Do you remember the trident, Ned? Gods, I do. Half the time I think I smell that river on every wet road in the realm. The mention of the river brought the rubies with it into Ned's mind, scattered from Rhaegar's breastplate into blood and current alike, flashing red as wounds in the shallows. Robert had worn victory that day like a god's own skin. Now he stood over a dead boar in a dripping northern wood and looked like an old man for 3 heartbeats running. Why did you never tell me? He asked. Ned could have answered any number of ways, and each would have been true in part and false in part. Because you would have killed him. Because I promised. Because Lyanna's dying voice was louder in me than your living rage. Because I knew what kind of king grief would make of you where Targaryens were concerned. Because I loved you once and knew better. Because silence kept him alive, he said. Robert rammed the butt of the spear into the ground. Hey, there is the rub. You were likely right, and I hate you for it. Ned said nothing. Robert scrubbed a hand through his beard. Last night I dreamed of her. Not as she was in the crypt all stone peace and roses. As she was at Harrenhal laughing with mud on her boots and every man in the lists too dull to deserve the sight of her. He stared at the blood on the spearhead. Then when I woke, I saw the boy's face. Jon's face, Ned corrected. Robert's mouth hardened. Do not ask me to name him kindly. I ask only that you remember he has a name. I remember too well that he had another father. The king turned, fixing Ned with a stare stripped of drunkenness and of all but the hardest truth. Hear me now, and hear me whole. I spared him because she asked it through you, and because I could not have your blood on my hands for defending him, and because when I looked upon him I saw more wolf than dragon. Those are poor reasons, but they are the reasons I have. They will not hold forever. Ned held the king's gaze. They need only hold long enough. For the wall, yes. Robert stepped closer, lowering his voice though there was no one near enough to overhear. Benjen Stark takes him north. Your son, your sister's son, your hidden sin. Call him what you like. Wears black before I leave Winterfell. He remains bastard to the world. If ever rumor rises that the Starks shelter a dragon prince, he is no prince. Tell that to men who need a banner more than they need truth. Robert's lip curled. If word rises, I stamp it out. If the boy flees the wall, I hunt him. If you speak of this to any man in the South, I will count that act treason however long our friendship lasted before it. Nah, treason, Ned repeated softly. For keeping faith with my sister. For endangering the realm. Robert's answer came without heat now. Cold conviction was worse. A king cannot afford your kind of mercy. Ned looked at the boar's blood soaking into wet earth and thought that kings seemed always to call one kind of mercy weakness and another necessity, according only to who died by it. And yet you mean to take me south as your hand? Robert's expression twisted. Gods, yes, because I need you. Because Aaron is dead and every other man near me wants something crooked. Because if I leave you in the north with your pieties and ghosts, I'll wonder every day whether there are more secrets under your roofs. Better to have you where I can shout at you. He gave a weary bark of laughter. And because perhaps some part of me still trusts the boy I knew in the Vale, though I know now the man grown from him could lie to my face for 14 years. The words hit harder than Ned let show. I did not lie every day. You lied enough. Rain shook from a branch above them and pattered onto Robert's shoulder. The smell of the slain boar thickened in the damp air. At length, the king sighed. A great gust of spent anger. There's another thing. Ned waited. I did not order the babes in King's Landing killed, Robert said. Not with my own mouth. I accepted it after. That may be worse. He looked off between the trees. I told myself then that dragon children grow into dragon kings. I tell myself now that the wall is mercy. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps neither is. His eyes came back to Ned's. Do not make me test it, Ned thought. Not for the first time that Robert's greatest weakness had never been rage, nor drink, nor lust. It was that he could not bear too close a look at the worst thing he had done, and so spent his life trampling the ground around it in hopes the truth beneath would stay buried. When they returned to Winterfell near midday, the boar lashed behind a pack horse, and the hounds crusted with mud. Cersei met them in the yard with her golden hair dry beneath a cloak that no rain seemed allowed to touch. "You vanished with my husband half the day," she said to Ned, smiling the sort of smile that warmed nothing. "Have the wolves taught the king to stalk?" Robert answered before Ned could. "The wolves taught me that boars bite harder than queens." Her smile thinned. "Something has bitten you, husband." Robert swung down heavily. "Hey," he said, handing off the spear with blood still drying on it. "The past." Cersei's eyes sharpened at that, but Robert was already striding away. That night, in the great hall with the boar roasted and steaming on platters, Robert rose from the high table with a cup in hand and named Eddard Stark his hand before all Winterfell. The hall shook with cheers. Benjen looked startled. Catelyn sat very straight and very pale. Jon, below the salt beside Tyrion Lannister and Robb, lifted his face to the dais, and whatever he saw in Ned's eyes there made his own expression close like a fist. The king drank to friendship. The hall drank with him. Ned tasted iron. Ned chose the godswood because there was nowhere else he could bear to say the words. The old gods had watched him bring the child to Winterfell. Let them watch now as he undid what years of silence had made. Jon came when called, though not gladly. He had the look of a boy who knew himself under judgment but not the charge. Ghost padded with him across the dark earth beneath the trees, white fur stark against roots black with old moisture. Steam drifted from the pools. The red leaves overhead whispered faintly, and the carved face in the heart tree stared down through its blood-dark tears. "You sent for me," Jon said. Ned stood with his cloak unfastened despite the chill. "Sit." Jon remained standing. "If this is about the wall, I've already told Uncle Benjen I mean to go. The wall is part of it." Jon's mouth tightened. He was angry, though he perhaps did not yet know at whom. "Then, say what you mean. The whole castle has been walking around me as if I've turned mad or contagious." "No, Ned looked at the boy. No, the young man. Old enough now that childhood had begun its retreat from the face while not yet wholly gone, and felt a sorrow so sharp it almost made honesty impossible. It would have been easier to lie once more, to tell Jon only that the king had taken offense at his presence, or that the wall had been secured as a favor. But half-truth now would only breed more poison later. "I am going south with the king," Ned said first, "because the lesser wound might ready the flesh for the greater." Jon blinked. "South. Us hand." The boy absorbed that with visible effort. Surprise warred with something darker. "And you tell me here because before I leave, there is something you must know." Jon's eyes narrowed. "About my mother." It had always been his first question, every few years in one form or another, asked more boldly as he grew. Ned had evaded, denied, deflected. Once Jon had been 8 and had asked with such plain hunger that Ned had gone out into the yard afterward and swung a sword at the Pell until his hands bled. "Yes," Ned said. Jon stopped breathing for a beat. Ned made himself continue. "Your mother was Lyanna Stark." The words seemed not to enter Jon at first. He only stared, frowning slightly, as if some part of his mind had refused the meaning. Then color drained from his face. "My aunt. Your mother." Jon laughed once, a small incredulous sound. "No. Yes. No." He stepped back. Ghost lifted his head. "This is some jest. Some northern cruel jest because I said I'd go to the wall like a child chasing tails. No, I would not jest of Lyanna." That name, spoken so flatly, struck where explanation had not. Jon's gaze darted to the heart tree, to the pools, anywhere but Ned's face. "My mother," he said softly, as if trying the shape of the impossible. Then all these years, I named you mine to keep you safe. Jon's head snapped up. Safe from what? Ned answered, because there was no other road left. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. If the first revelation had stunned, the second split. Jon recoiled as though struck. His heel caught on a root and he nearly went down. Ghost surged to his side, hackles lifting, but Jon shook him off without looking. Rhaegar. The name was almost voiceless. The prince. The prince. The prince who stole her. Ned closed his eyes for an instant. That is what men said. What do you say? The question came like a blade. Ned opened his eyes to the carved weirwood face and wished, for one wretched instant, that gods truly did speak aloud in groves and storms, so he might hand this burden upward and be done. I say only what I know. I found Lyanna in Dorne, dying in a bed made bloody by your birth. She begged me to keep you alive. 3 Kingsguard had guarded the tower. That much I know. The rest? He looked back at Jon. The rest died with her. Jon's mouth twisted. So I am a bastard in one tale and a rape-born dragon in another. The cruelty of it turned in Ned like a knife. You are my sister's son. And his. Yes. Jon took another step backward until the weirwood's roots rose behind him. Why did you never tell me? Because Robert Baratheon would have killed you if he knew. He knows now. Yes. There was silence after that. A silence so taut even the leaves seemed to wait around it. Jon laughed again, and there was nothing of humor in it this time. So that is why I go to the wall. Ned did not soften it. Yes. All this time I thought I was choosing. Jon ran a hand over his face, then dragged it down hard as if trying to strip skin away and find some different face beneath. A bastard who cannot inherit and does not fit in his father's hall. There was honor in the wall then. Freedom, maybe. Now, it is a cage with ice on it. It is life. That seems a word the grown men around me favor when they mean I should be grateful for whatever scraps are left. The bitterness in him was not unjust. Ned let it come. Jon turned away abruptly and stood looking into the black water of the nearest pool. Ghost paced in restless circles. For a little while, there was only the faint bubbling of the spring beneath the surface. At last, Jon said, "Did Lady Stark know?" "She knows now." "And before?" "No." Jon's jaw clenched. "So you let her hate me." "I let everyone think less of me so they would not think of you at all." "That is not an answer." Ned took the blow because he deserved it. "It is the only one I have." Jon faced him again, eyes bright not with tears yet, but with the terrible pressure of them. "My whole life you would not tell me my mother's name. You would not tell me whether she was noble or common, good or cruel, living or dead. I used to think if I had just one true thing about her I could endure the rest. One thing. And all the while..." He broke off, swallowing hard. Ned stepped closer despite the danger of it. "I named you Jon for Jon Arryn," he said quietly, "because he was the truest foster father I ever knew. And because I needed a name honorable enough to shelter you. It was my choice, not Lyanna's. Many things in your life were my choices. Some were good, some were cruel. All were made to keep you breathing." "No, Penkabida." Jon's face changed at that, not softening, but opening for one instant onto the hurt beneath the anger. "Breathing," he said. "Is that all you hoped for me?" Ned thought of the first time the infant had quieted in his arms, of Robb and Jon toddling side by side in the yard, of Jon bent over Bran's broken body, with fear plain on him, of every year he had watched the boy become more himself, and more his mother, and more a danger he could not name. "No," he said. "I hoped for more. I dared not ask it of the world." Jon drew a harsh breath. "Do you know whether he ever saw me, Rhaegar?" "No." "Do you know whether she loved him?" Ned could not lie, and would not pretend certainty. "No." "Then I have half a father I hate, and half a mother I cannot know." Jon's voice thinned. And the only man who was father to me was lying every day I can remember. That one Ned felt cleanly. He bowed his head. Yes, they stood with that truth between them, bleak as winter. From somewhere beyond the dark trunks came a crackle of movement. Arya likely disobeying some command to keep clear and slipping where she ought not. Jon half turned at the sound and then stilled. He did not call her out. Neither did Ned. Some mercies were no more than postponements. At last Ned said, "Whatever blood is in you, I am the man who raised you." Jon looked at him long. The anger in him had not gone. It would not go soon. But something else, older and deeper, fought beneath it and would not wholly yield. "I know," he said. And now the tears had come into his eyes whether he wished them there or no. That makes it worse. Ned had no answer to give a son who could say such a thing and still be right. He did the only thing left to him. He laid a hand on Jon's shoulder. For a heartbeat the boy held rigid beneath it. Then he did not move away. When Ned left the Godswood, Jon remained beneath the red leaves with Ghost at his side and the carved face of the old god staring through blood-colored tears. They left 2 days later. Winterfell had not yet fully recovered its ordinary face. The king remained in its chambers with his train and noise and hungry southern ease. Yet a strain lay under all of it now, invisible to most and inescapable to those nearest the wound. Servants lowered their voices when Robert passed. Cersei's gaze had sharpened to a knife edge. Ned moved through his own hall as if each stone had shifted half an inch from where he remembered it. Jon went about his preparations with a stillness that made even Theon curb his jests. Arya found him in the armory passage the night before they rode. He had taken what little was his. A change of clothes, a few books, a knife, leather for mending, flint, and the riding gloves Catelyn had left without word outside his chamber. He had stared at those gloves a long time before packing them. The hurt in him had not untangled enough to know what to do with the gesture, so he had treated it like all other northern mercies, silently and with care. Micken's forge glowed low and red beyond the inner door. Jon had wrapped the slim Braavosi blade himself in gray wool. Arya came in hot with purpose, dark hair half loose from whatever battle she had just waged with propriety. "You were avoiding me." "I was packing." "That is avoidance when the packing lasts half a day." He almost smiled despite himself. Arya had always had that gift of cracking the shell of gloom without seeming to try. Tonight even she had to work for it. "I brought you something," he said. Her suspicion vanished at once into fierce curiosity. He handed over the bundle. She unwrapped it and the blade flashed thin and bright in the forge glow. Her breath caught. A real sword. "Not too big for you," Jon said, "and not so pretty that you'll be afraid to use it." Arya turned it in her hands with reverence. "What's it called?" He had not thought to name it until that moment, and then the answer came with no effort. "Needle, de Dyke." She burst into delighted laughter. "It is not a sewing needle. It is if you put it in the right place." She ran a thumb along the grip, then looked up at him sharply. "Something is wrong." Jon opened his mouth to deny it and closed it again. He could not tell her. Robert's threat sat behind every silence now. Even if it had not, how was he to put into words what he himself could not yet hold? "I am your cousin, not your brother. I am the son of the prince the songs praise, and your father's king killed. I do not know whether I was born of love or rape or prophecy or folly. I am leaving because a king wants me buried in snow while alive." Instead he said, "I'm leaving sooner than I thought." "You always meant to go." "Yes, but not like this." "No," he thought. "Never like this." Arya stepped close and flung her arms hard about his waist before he could stop her. He held her fiercely in return, face bent against the top of her head. In the yard below, somewhere out in the dark, Ghost gave a low, restless sound. "Don't become solemn and frozen like Uncle Benjen," she said into his jerkin. "I make no promises. Come back and I'll beat you with that sword if you do." He let her go before grief could show too plainly on his face. Keep the pointy end forward. She rolled her eyes. I know. At dawn, mist hung over the yard and the flagstones sweated cold under boot. Horses stamped. Men checked buckles and girths. Benjen stood ready in black wool and leather, horse already impatient beneath him. Tyrion Lannister, bundled against the chill with less dignity than he perhaps imagined he carried, complained to no one in particular that the North had mistaken summer for an insult. I might have stayed south for all the hospitality I've had, he said, tightening his gloves. But I am told there is a wall of ice worth seeing, and I have always admired folly in architecture. You'll admire more of it when your saddle sores ripen, Benjen told him. Jon mounted without feeling much of anything from the body below the ribs. Some mercies the body gave of its own accord. It numbed when the spirit could not yet bear its full weight. Robb clasped his forearm first, grip fierce enough to bruise. Right if you can. If there is anyone there who can read my hand. I can read your hand and I'll read it badly and mock you from here. Jon's laugh came easier with Robb than it had anywhere else these days. Look after Bran and Arya. Nah, I look after everyone. Try starting with yourself for once. Bran clung to the mounting block, all bright excitement and sorrow mixed together. Tell me if the wall is as tall as people say. It is taller, Jon said, though he had not yet seen it and somehow knew the answer must be true. Rickon did not understand why everyone wore long faces. He shoved a carved wolf into Jon's boot and declared it should guard him where Ghost could not. Jon promised solemnly that 2 wolves were better than 1. Sansa kissed his cheek because courtesy demanded it, but there was unease in her eyes. Even before the truth, she had never known quite what to do with him. Now she seemed to sense some wrongness in the air and wished herself well apart from it. Catelyn came last. For a heartbeat, Jon thought she might not come at all. Then she stepped from the shadow of the gatehouse, cloak clasped at the throat, face composed in that careful lady's calm which could hide storm, pity, or stone-heartedness, and never tell a man which. The gloves fit? She asked. Jon had not expected speech, and less expected that speech. Yes, my lady. Her eyes, blue and clear as river water in winter, rested on him in a way they never had before. Not warmly, not maternally, but without the old shrinking displeasure. Good, she said. The wall is cold. There was more in the words than weather. Not apology exactly, not forgiveness. Yet something had shifted, and for all his raw anger at the world, Jon could not make himself refuse the small grace. Thank you, he said. Catelyn nodded once and stepped back. Ned had said little all morning. What could he say? The truth between them now was too new and jagged for easy fatherly counsel. At the gate, he laid both hands on Jon's shoulders and held him there for one long moment, searching his face as if to fix it in memory against distance. Benjen will see you safe, he said. Jon looked at the man who had lied to him all his life and loved him through every lie. You are sending me there, he answered, and saw the hurt land though Ned had deserved it. Yes. Jon swallowed against the ache in his throat. Then I will go. Their foreheads nearly touched. It was not an embrace, not before the yard, not before all those watching eyes. It was something older, sterner, harder to witness. At last, Ned stepped back. Above, on the wall walk, Robert Baratheon stood with one hand braced against the parapet. The king had come without fanfare or cloak of ceremony, only heavy fur thrown over a plain tunic, beard uncombed, face lined from poor sleep. Cersei stood a little apart from him in bright gold and scarlet, every inch a queen and no inch a comfort. Jaime was beside her, sunlight striking the metal at his wrist. Robert watched Jon mount up. His face gave away almost nothing. Yet when Ghost slipped through the gate before the riders and paused to look back, white shape in drifting mist, the king's jaw tightened. There, Cersei said lightly, though the lightness fooled no one with ears. The bastard leaves, and the castle mourns as if one of your princes were riding to war. Robert did not turn to her. Not every grief needs your understanding. The queen's mouth went thin. Then the gate opened fully. The road yawned gray beyond, and Jon put heels to horse. Winterfell began at once to fall behind him. Stone towers, hot steam, battlements, the gods' wood hidden within walls. His brother on the ground, his sisters on the steps, Ned beneath the gatehouse arch, Catelyn with her hands folded, Robert on the wall above like some dark carved thing set there to judge passage. He did not look back again. The road north from Winterfell seemed longer to Jon than the road had ever seemed south to anyone. Perhaps exile stretched miles. Perhaps a truth newly learned made all distance feel like the pulling of flesh. They rode beneath a sky that could not decide between rain and mist, and so gave them both by turns. The land opened and narrowed again in slow northern measures. Heather moors silvered with damp, dark stands of pine, lonely crofts where thin smoke climbed from chimneys, and children stared from doorways as the riders passed. Ghost went ahead or lagged behind according to whims no man could read, but never strayed so far that the flash of white vanished altogether. Benjen kept the pace steady and speech spare. Tyrion Lannister made up for both silences with a steady mutter of complaints, observations, and half-jests that he seemed to scatter like seed merely to see what took root. "This is not a road," he said on the second day as rain found the seam between his hood and collar for the 7th time. "It is a punishment stretched flat." "You chose to ride it," Benjen answered. "I chose to see the wall." No one mentioned the wet miles in between. Tyrion squinted at Jon, who had not spoken more than a handful of words since Winterfell. "And our young black brother chooses gloom with a devotion bordering on religious. I begin to feel cheerful by comparison, which is bad for the soul." Jon might once have answered with some stiff joke. Now, he only rode on. That evening they'd camp beneath a lean stand of trees, where the ground rose enough to keep the worst of the damp from their blankets. Benjen saw to the horses, Tyrion to the wine, and Jon to the fire, because hands needed employment if the mind was not to tear itself open. When the flames were well caught and smoke rose blue into the branches, Tyrion settled onto a log with the cup cradled in both hands, and watched Jon through the shifting light. "You know," he said at last, "I was wrong in Winterfell." Jon glanced up despite himself. "I took you for the ordinary sad pride of a bastard who has not yet learned that the world can be bested by refusing to let it define the terms of your humiliation. A common enough ailment, easily mocked. What I see now is a rarer sickness." Tyrion sipped. "You look like a young man who has swallowed a crown and found it made of nails." Benjen's head lifted slightly at that. Jon stared into the flames. "I have swallowed nothing," he said. "Then something has swallowed you." The dwarf's voice was not unkind. That made it more dangerous. Jon shoved a branch farther into the fire and watched sparks leap. Tyrion went on in his easy, infuriating way. "I still say the trick to surviving the world's contempt is to meet it before it strikes. Men call you bastard? Wear the word until it bruises them to say it. Men laugh at your place? Laugh first and better. The world has little defense against a man who refuses to be arranged by it." "Nay, no." Jon looked up sharply. "And what of the names that are not yours, but are nailed to you all the same?" Tyrion's dark eyes narrowed a fraction. "Those are harder." He drank. "Most men spend their lives trying to become less like their fathers. Some fail. Some succeed and still feel haunted. Blood, in my experience, is overpraised by those with too much of it and too little imagination." "Nay." Benjen set down the tack he had been checking and came to the far side of the fire. "Enough philosophy from a Lannister. You'll sour the meat. On the contrary, I season it." Jon almost smiled and hated himself for how grateful he was for even that tiny crack in the dark. When they bedded down, sleep came badly. Jon dreamed in fragments. A tower against a red sky. 3 white cloaks unmoving at a door. Blue roses crushed in a woman's bloody hand. Rubies sinking through river water. A man with silver hair whose face he could never fully see, though he knew the sadness in it somehow belonged to him. In the dream, he looked down and found his own hands reddened, as if he had thrust them into a chest and drawn them out full of some beast's heart. Then Ghost howled, and the sound turned into Robert's voice saying if he breaks those vows, I will kill him myself. Jon woke with his breath raw in his throat and cold sweat under his tunic. Benjen was already awake, seated on his blanket with his cloak about him and dawn just beginning to gray the trees. He looked at Jon for a long moment, then passed him a skin of water. Dreams? Jon drank. Yes. Good. The wall is built for men haunted enough to keep watch. Jon lowered the skin. Did Ned tell you? Benjen was quiet before answering. Enough. Rage flashed so fast and clean through Jon that it shocked him with its force. Then you knew. All this while? Nah. I knew something was wrong at the tower where Lyanna died, Benjen said, voice level. I knew Ned came home with a child and a face I'd never seen on him before. I guessed at pieces. I was not told the whole. Do not make me more guilty than I am, boy. The list is long enough without false additions. Jon looked away. Shame and anger made poor companions, yet they rode together well. After a time, Benjen said, blood is a banner other men like to wave over your head. Some call it destiny because they are too lazy to think of choice. The wall strips such banners from men. Some hate that. Some are saved by it. Me. Saved, Jon repeated with sour weariness. You favor that word less than your father, Benjen said dryly. Ned, Jon nearly answered, then stopped. The word father had become a room full of echoes and no door. Tyrion, who had risen at some point and was warming his hands over the fire, snorted. For what it's worth, lad, you look nothing like a dragon to me. Too much face and not enough vanity. Jon barked a laugh then, because the image was absurd and because it hurt too much not to. Ghost, hearing it, rose and shook himself. White first silver in dawn's first light. By the afternoon of the fourth day, the wall appeared. At first it was only a brightness on the northern horizon that might have been cloud or snow or some trick of light. Then it sharpened, lifting out of the world not as a thing built, but as if winter itself had risen and taken the shape of a blade. Jon reined it in without meaning to. No song had ever prepared him for the sheer impossible size of it. It did not seem made by men. It seemed made against them. Beside him, Tyrion whistled under his breath. At last, he murmured. A folly worthy of the road? Benjen's face gave nothing away, but there was pride in the set of his shoulders. Jon stared at the white vastness and felt, for the first time since the gods would, something other than grief and fury take hold. It was fear, yes, but under it, or alongside it, there was awe. Southbound, the world seemed to grow louder with every mile. The quiet of the north gave way by degrees to more inns, more villages, more fields under plow, more men eager to gape at royal banners and shout blessings that meant little and might one day mean treason if shouted under the wrong colors. Robert grew larger amid crowds, as some men do. He straightened in the saddle when hailed, laughed when girls threw flowers, took boreskins of ale from thankful farmers, let children stare in wonder at the king they knew only from coin and song. Yet in the private hours he seemed diminished, as if whatever iron had been holding him together in Winterfell had started to rust beneath him. Ned rode beside him often and spoke when spoken to. Their friendship had not ended. That would have been clean, and nothing about the matter was clean. But something essential in it had cracked. Robert would fall into old stories without warning and end them midway, staring off towards some field or stream as if another landscape were laid over the present one. Then he would remember himself and demand accounts of roads, levies, grain, and brigands with the blunt force of kingship. The realm breeds gnats when I want hounds, he grumbled one evening over supper in an inn south of Moat Cailin. Aaron dies, and suddenly every lord remembers 3 cousins with claims and 2 neighbors with insults. I am tired of settling men's pride with my name. Then let your councils settle it lawfully, Ned said. My councils steal while speaking of law. You chose many of them. Robert drank. And that may be the truest indictment laid at my feet. He set the cup down harder than necessary. Do you know what I hate most in this? Ned did not answer. Robert rarely asked questions unless he had already chosen the answer and needed another man to suffer it with him. That I still want to trust you, the king said. That even after Winterfell I sleep better with you on the road than I would with any 10 men in silk. He rubbed at his brow. You make a fool of loyalty, Ned. It never learned when to stop. Nor yours. Robert gave him a look that might once have led to laughter between them. Now it ended in a sigh. Perhaps. Cersei rode often in a wheelhouse, but came mounted when the weather pleased her. She watched them both. Not openly, never crudely. The Queen's power lay not in open challenge, but in the patient measuring of weakness. She knew some shift had happened in Winterfell. Robert's temper toward her had sharpened, his drunken silences deepened, and Eddard Stark, who should have been merely another northern obstacle to endure in order to secure a daughter's crown, had become something else. A man the king could neither wholly forgive nor wholly release. Once, on a warm afternoon when the road dipped through orchards and the children rode ahead with septa, mordain, and guards, Cersei slowed her mare until she came level with Ned. You have changed my husband's mood, she said pleasantly. I was not aware it needed my help. Everything needs help becoming worse. Her smile did not reach her eyes. Men do not come out of crypts in the north looking like that unless they have found either ghosts or truths. Perhaps in the south you call them the same thing. The queen looked at him for a long measured beat. Then she laughed softly and touched her horse onward. Ned watched her go and felt a fresh unease. Cersei did not need full truth to do damage. She needed only scent of blood. By the time the towers of King's Landing rose hazy from heat and river stink, Ned longed for the clean cold of the Godswood more fiercely than he had ever longed for any place in youth. The city sprawled vulgar and alive beneath its walls. All smoke, dung, shouting, bell clangor, and the endless press of people. Winterfell held its space like a lord. King's Landing swarmed like a market at the edge of famine. Robert brightened at the sight of it, but in the wrong ways. Not with duty, with appetite. Wine, women, loud halls. The false comfort of habits that had long since become his armor against thought. At the gates, crowds roared his name. Gold cloaks shouted back. Trumpets screamed. The queen sat straight as a spear point. Joffrey basked. Sansa glowed. Arya looked overwhelmed and stubborn both. Ned rode through the noise feeling not honored but enclosed. When the formalities were done and the baggage had begun its snaking progress into the Red Keep, Robert called him apart to a balcony overlooking the city. Evening sun burned the river bronze. Bells from the great septi carried thinly across hot air. This is your cage now, Robert said, not quite smiling. The Tower of the Hand, petitions, counselors, scribes, liars, and every little theft in the realm delivered to your table tied with ribbon. An enviable gift. I never said it was enviable. Robert leaned both hands on the stone balustrade. I said I needed you in it. Ned looked down over the city and thought of Jon looking up at the wall. Has the bargain changed? He asked. Robert's answer was immediate and hard. No. Then I will serve. Robert turned his head slightly. Good. And Ned? Ned waited. We do not speak of him again. Ned might have argued that a life buried in silence was no life at all. He might have said that boys did not cease to be because kings found them inconvenient. He might have said 100 truths. Instead, he said, as you command. That was kingship in the end, not merely obedience. The slow grinding down of every truth that could not survive command. The days that followed swallowed him whole. Small council meetings with Petter Baelish smiling like a man already counting coin he had not yet stolen. Grand Maester Pycelle nodding through long-winded cautions. Renly Baratheon easy and handsome and sharper than his jest suggested. Varys drifting in silk and powder, soft-voiced as wrought behind velvet. Robert bored within a quarter hour of any matter that did not involve war, feasting, or his own annoyance. Ned sat in the high seat of office and felt no more lord of it than a condemned man feels lord of the scaffold stairs. At night, he wrote to Winterfell, to Catelyn about court, to Robb about the duties of the hall, to Maester Luwin about stores and training. Once he began a letter to the wall with Jon's name set Stark at the top and sat staring at it until candle wax pooled to his fingers. In the end, he burned it. What could he write? Be patient. Forgive me. Live. Words that wanted action and could not have it were ashes already. One night, late, as he crossed an inner gallery, he heard Robert inside his chamber before the door was fully shut. The king was not singing, not laughing, not rutting with some hired comfort. He was speaking to no one. "Damn you, Lyanna," he said hoarsely from within. "Damn you for dying. Damn you for leaving me the wrong ghosts." Ned walked on. Castle Black was uglier than the wall and more human. Jon had imagined some stern grandeur awaiting beneath that impossible ice. Instead, he found sagging timber, black stone, smoke that stank of poor fuel, yards churned to mud, old towers crouched against the cold, and men everywhere who looked not like heroes from old songs, but like what they were. Thieves, poachers, broken younger sons, hard-eyed veterans, and those whom the world had spat north because there was nowhere else to send. The wall rose beyond and above it all, pure enough to make the castle seem mean by contrast. The great face of ice caught the weak light and threw it back, pale and merciless. Crows crossed before it like thrown soot. Tyrion took one look at the blackened towers and sighed theatrically. At last, a place that has spent its beauty on scale and had nothing left for comfort. Benjen ignored him and led Jon through the gate. Men looked up as they passed. Some knew Benjen by name and rank. Some noticed only the direwolf. Some measured the new arrival with the fast, cruel curiosity men reserve for one another, when all are caged and rank must be sorted by wound or wit. Ghost bared his teeth at a too eager hand, and the hand snatched back. They found Lord Commander Jorah Mormont in a chamber that smelled of parchment, smoke, and old leather. He was a bear of a man gone gray, heavy in shoulder and brow, with eyes still clear enough to cut excuses from a room before they were spoken. A crow perched above the lintel and watched them enter as if it sat in judgment over the watch itself. "Benjen," Mormont said, "you took your time. The road was the road. Aye, and still a fool thing men insist on crossing." The Lord Commander's gaze settled on Jon. "This, the boy?" Jon felt absurdly, as if the question reached deeper than Benjen could answer. "This is Jon Snow," Benjen said. The name landed in the room and stayed. Mormont grunted. "Wolf with him. Always. Then keep the beast from eating my brothers." The crow above the door gave a harsh cry that sounded suspiciously like agreement. Tyrion bowed from where he had made himself comfortable near the hearth. "Lord Commander, I present you with one bastard, one ranger, and one perfectly miserable traveler who expects a warm room purely on the strength of good intentions." "Then you'll freeze on intentions," Mormont said, though not without the hint of a smile. Benjen drew the Lord Commander aside long enough for quiet words. Jon did not strain to hear. He knew already what any private exchange would contain. The king's will, the need for silence, some hard outline of his own presence here. He stood with Ghost's ruff in his hand and looked around the chamber at maps curled with age, at the weapons on the wall, at the thick candle wax on the table, and thought that whatever else happened, no one here would look at him and think first of Winterfell. He was grateful for that in ways too complicated to name. When Benjen and Mormont returned, the Lord Commander studied him a little more closely. "You understand what this place is?" Jon met his gaze. "I thought I did. And now?" Jon glanced once through the open shutter where the wall blazed white in the cold sun. "Now I think I understand less. But I am here all the same." Mormont's beard twitched. "That may put you ahead of half the men who come to us." He folded thick hands atop the table. "The Night's Watch has no use for crowns, claims, or family vanities. A man who takes the black comes to us stripped of all that. You keep your courage if you have it. your strength if you can, and your vows if you are worth a damn. The rest is wind." Jon felt Benjen's eyes on him. Perhaps the whole world's. Lyanna in her bed of blood. Rhaegar, whose face he had never seen. Robert with mercy like a drawn blade. Catelyn leaving gloves by a bastard's door. Arya with needle in her hand. Ned in the Godswood, saying, "I am the man who raised you." He straightened. "My name is Jon Snow," he said, and knew as he said it that the choice mattered. Whatever truths had been hidden in him, whatever blood other men might one day kill or die for, this name was the one he had lived. He would not surrender it because a prince had fathered him or a king had feared him, or songs might make better use of something grander. Mormont nodded once, not warmly but with respect enough to be felt. Then Jon Snow may train with the others on the morrow and learn how far wanting the wall differs from serving it. Tyrion raised his cup in mock solemnity. A cheerful welcome. "It will harden him," Mormont said. "Or kill him," said Tyrion. "Both have their uses." Later, when formalities had been discharged and the first bleak meal eaten in the common hall, Benjen took Jon up. Not to the top. Not yet. Not the true crown of ice where men stared into the endless white wilderness and felt themselves dwindled, but high enough along the stairs and icy galleries that the land south and north could both be seen at once through different cuts in the structure. The wind bit through wool and leather. Frost made every railing treacherous. Ghost came light-footed and sure, as if ice had been bred into him. The world spread strange and divided. Southward lay the lands of men, forests and hills and roads, all diminished by height until they seemed not kingdoms and grudges and bloodlines, but a patched skin of brown and green under a whitening sky. Northward, beyond the wall, stretched something older and less forgiving, forest and shadow and distance without boundary. Benjen stood beside him with one hand on the rough ice. "This is where the old stories stop being stories." Jon nodded. He could not have spoken just then. "Whatever you were born of," Benjen said after a while, "that matters less here than what you do when winter comes in truth." Jon turned to him. "And if winter already came?" Benjen's mouth curved, not in amusement but in the hard recognition of one wounded man seeing another at last. "Then you endure it." The wind drove at them. Jon looked south until the line of the world blurred, and for a moment, he imagined that if he stared hard enough, he might see Winterfell's towers rising from the land, or the road crawling down toward King's Landing, or Robert at some southern window with a cup in hand and old ghosts at his back. He imagined Ned in the Tower of the Hand, bent over papers by candlelight, carrying the weight of king and secret alike. He imagined Lyanna not as stone, but as a young woman laughing with mud on her boots, then crying out in pain in a room far away, asking her brother for a promise that had become a life. He put a hand on Ghost's neck. The direwolf's fur was warm beneath the cold air. Wolf, he thought. Dragon, perhaps. Bastard, certainly. Son, still. None of those names would keep the wind off him. None would hold a sword when his grip failed. None would stand watch in the dead of night if he would not do it himself. Below, Castle Black groaned and smoked and lived. Above, the wall shone like a blade no hand could lift. Jon Snow drew breath that burned in his lungs and let it out to the north. Here at the edge of the world, where ice divided the realms of men from everything darker and older, blood meant less than cold, and cold meant less than whether a man could stand beneath it and remain himself.